The two Jeffs did a great job, by the way. Great job. There's a handout on your table that's got a copy of the proposed closing disclosure. So what's happened, and Jeff kind of filled you in on what occurred through all of this legislative process. The HUD goes away, and the closing disclosure form is a combination of the final truth in lending. It would typically be signed at closing and the HUD statement. So there will no longer be a HUD once this proposed rule is put into place and it's or we're using it. So there's a 5-page form that replaces the current HUD. We've made lots of comments as an industry, as well as the lenders and your industry, to the CFPB once this was put out as a proposed rule, because it basically changes the whole process of how we are involved in the closing. Part of that rule is who's going to deliver this to the borrower. In the proposed rule, they've asked for comment as to whether the lenders or the settlement service providers are the ones that are going to deliver this form to the borrower. So we won't know until September, when the final rule is published, as to who's going to be responsible to deliver. So in the event that it's the lender, that changes your whole process, because the title companies or the settlement service providers no longer will be preparing that closing statement, the lenders will. So that's part of the rule. In addition to that, there is a 3-day supplemental portion of this where the closing disclosure form has to be delivered to the borrower, and the borrower has to acknowledge receipt 3 days prior to closing. So there's going to be that portion of it also. So they're trying to prevent where the lenders are delivering figures the day before closing, the day of closing. But what that really does is it imposes upon us that if there's a change in that 3-day period, the 3 days starts all over again. So if there's a final walkthrough and there's changes of more than $100 that affect the closing statement, you have to start your 3 days all over again. Deliver the revised closing statement and wait for those 3 days. And it's 3 business days. So it could really start pushing what you're involved in, your closings, out based upon all of those factors. In addition to those items, the closing disclosure is not anything like the prior HUD. Each section of the closing disclosure now is alphabetical, so you don't know that you're going to go look at line 1103 for your title insurance, 1104 for the lender's title insurance, your 1300 section for your survey and termite. Those all go away. They've got sections with like A, B, C, D with numbered items in there where they'll list the charges alphabetically based upon whatever charges would affect that area. The charges are not categorized like they used to be. They're spread out, so all your title charges and closing costs are not together. They're in 2 separate sections. The commissions are under other charges. There's not a commission section on this form. So it's going to be a significant change to all of us. We're anticipating that we'll probably have to do a seller closing statement in addition to the closing disclosure, because all of the loan information and all of the private information for that loan are contained on the closing disclosure. And if you look at the very last page of the disclosure, there's not really a signature page, it's an acknowledgement page is what they're proposing. So they're basically saying that this is delivered to the borrower, they've got 3 days prior to closing, they acknowledge receipt, and then after those 3 days you can go to your actual closing. So it's a significant change. Outside of that, I don't think, is there anything else I missed, Jeff? No? Okay. So I think I'm done.
Dave, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
On the $100 variance, if it's in the favor of the borrower, are we still calculating the 3 days?
You're okay, as long as it's not an increase.
Okay, perfect.